have the voting goes proper. Everyone get a chance to vote. Who can participate in the process would allow them to participate. And as you see, come election night, we hear lots about Electoral, the Central Voting Bureau, because they who manage that. And one of them said, one of their key responsibility is oversight. And we have tend to see that once election is over, you hear much of them talk during the election, and they determine, okay, this party has won enough seats to form the government, and then say, okay, good, Party A have gotten so many seats, and Party B have allotted so many seats, okay, now they can form the government. What we have seen here now is that we tend to drop the whole oversight responsibility at that time. No, this has to go on. And I say that because now we find ourselves that you'll find members of parliament straight out indiscriminately declaring themselves as an independent member of parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, our system does not provide for an independent member of parliament. Nowhere within the Constitution, within the Charter, is there talk about an independent member of parliament. One cannot get elected as an independent member of parliament. One cannot participate within our electoral system as an independent member of parliament. You have to be part of that, a member of a political party. Okay? And with that said, we already started late. That I'm now going to turn to the panelists, because the idea here tonight and this town hall is strictly for our political leadership to provide you, the electorate, with information. It's not about Julio's position on a particular issue, no. It's not a debate. We want them to straight out their campaign throughout the last election about electoral reform. So we wanted them to tell us what they have in plans for us, what they see electoral reform, how they conceive it, how they conceptualize it. Okay? And if we're here to, again, it's important, very, very important, that whatever they might bring as an amendment or new legislation about our electoral system, that you be part of this. It's going to impact you. That's why I figured this hall should have been filled with folks, because it's going to impact you. And if we sit up there and say, well, we don't care, please do care. It's going to impact you. And 𝒚𝒐, St. Maarten Institute for Public Policy, has made it its mission to inform you. Okay? And that's all. We're not out here trying to push an agenda as such. No, it's about cultivating a more informed society. Okay? As a St. Maartener, I feel proud to do that. Okay? I grew up on the streets of Front Street, and there was not much in terms of informing us as children. And I had the opportunity as a youngster to travel abroad to study. I went off, I studied my first degree, economics and political science, public administration secondly, and public policy evaluation and formulation, move off to high graduate into comparative government and politics. And I say it's time for me to give back to my fellow St. Martins and residents. So please, I want you to get engaged. Be part of that process. So we're going to now turn to the panelists, and now you heard enough from me, and then let them give them their perception, what they see as electoral reform. Everyone have a different perspective. Everybody. None is bad, none is good, no. But we have to trash them out. And with that said, we'll turn to Ms. Rosenberg, as not because she's a lady there, I know this lady, no, not that at all. But this is one of the URSM main campaign pledges, that once they get into government, they're going to have electoral reform. So we're going to turn to Ms. Rosenberg and tell us what she or the party perceives when we talk about electoral reform. Okay? And we want to specifically to speak to what would be one of the first things, the priority that she sees or the party sees when it comes to electoral reform. Here, Rosenberg, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, blessed evening. As you can see, there are two leaders next to me. Officially, the Prime Minister was going to be present, but because of other engagements, he couldn't make it. So that's why I'm here as Member of Parliament for the URSM party. That being said, electoral reform indeed is high on the agenda of the URSM, but also on the level of Parliament, and I'm also sitting here as a Member of Parliament, and I do believe it's important to know that electoral reform is high on our agenda, and currently Parliament is also engaged with a law firm to make sure that we, legislative-wise, can bring the address to electoral reform, because for years it has been a topic, but I do believe that now on a legislative level, those changes need to come. So just to give some insight, the different political parties in Parliament will be having meetings with that law firm to give their insights into electoral reform so that we can get the ball rolling and making sure that on a legislative level, those changes can come. Just to answer the question of the moderator in regards to electoral reform, you can look at it from different aspects. Electoral reform, when you look at the law, changes need to be made through the kiesverordening. I don't know the translation of the ordinance.
Election ordinance.
Yeah, thank you. Election ordinance. So it depends on what do we would like to see to be changed. I believe, and I also can speak for the URSM, that informative sessions need to take place to know where do the community stand with electoral reform. Because it was mentioned just now that we have a party system. That is correct. But we also have on that system, once you are elected, based on the law, the person that is elected holds that seat. So you can look at it from two perspectives, saying that one, you were not elected on your own. It was a party process, unless you have gained your seat on your own. But on the other hand, once you are in Parliament, you are representing a party, but you're also there as a person. So as a person, based on the Constitution, you need to be able to make those decisions as a person. So it's a two-way street to look at it. And if you look at it legislative-wise, that's why you're seeing that in the past, for example, people decided to go independent. If that wasn't a possibility based on the Constitution, you couldn't have gone independent. So then you should have to look at the legislation. Okay, if we would not want that to happen, then legislative-wise, those changes need to be made. And that's a discussion that you should have, because you can look at it from a perspective of you were not elected on your own, so that's why you cannot take that seat and decide that seat belongs to myself, or you should be able to do that because on these and these regulations. So it is a conversation to have, and you can look at it from two perspectives. Okay, would you want that or wouldn't you want that? And there is two things to say. You can say, yes, I would like that because I don't see in line with the party that I'm part of, or no, that shouldn't be the case because you were not elected on your own. The seats, the amount of seats that a party received was collectively received, so how can you decide to leave that party and go on your own? Because if you weren't part of a party, you couldn't have been elected. So that's the deeper conversation that I believe we should have, and dive into why should it be possible and why shouldn't it be possible. And if you, for example, do not align with your party anymore, should you resign and decide, okay, I will wait out until another election? Or should you have the opportunity to go on your own and decide to be a member of Parliament independently? Or should there be restrictions in the law that if you decide to go independent, that can happen under certain conditions, or that shouldn't happen, you should resign from a party and the next in line should come in? So those conversations I believe you should have here today to know, okay, where does the public that is present here today, where do they stand? Because I personally don't believe there's a straightforward answer in yes or no, because it can also be that you have, for example, friction with your party for whatever reasons, or you're being bullied in your party for whatever reasons, and you don't feel comfortable with your party anymore, and you also took an oath to represent the people of St. Maarten. So I'm not going to sit here and say the only option is for you to resign and let the next in line come in. But on the other hand, I also do not believe that if you, for example, got 200 or 300 votes or 400 votes, and you decide, okay, this is my seat, and I decide, and whatever the party says doesn't count anymore. So maybe we should look into, for example...
In looking into that,
yes.
And I listen keenly, and
I know your position on that as well.
Well, no, here again,
Yeah.
it's not my position. Okay, we have to put things into perspective.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, what the Constitution says, that the composition of Parliament is based on what? Proportional representation.
That's correct.
That means what? You are in Parliament representing based on what? The proportion of the seats, the number of votes received by the electorate. The electorate has said, without clear things, okay, 10% of us have voted for Ms. Rosenberg. Or in this case, not Ms. Rosenberg, the political party.
Indeed.
Okay? You see, we tend to take things out of context and be more subjective.
I don't fully agree.
Of course, and I dare anyone have asked this question to many persons. Show me within, I'm open, show me within the Constitution, within the Charter, or any other statutory document that you choose to pull, where you constitutionally are allowed to declare yourself as an independent member of Parliament. Show me within the Constitution, within any regulation, where the Parliament of St. Maarten can recognize a person becoming an independent member of Parliament. First, we must understand, we are in what? A parliamentary democracy. Okay? So the seat is not yours. It belongs to the party. And if you want to say, well, it's yours, you have gotten what? Maybe 1% of the vote. Your neighbor down here have gotten what? Maybe 2%. So he should be there, not you.
Well, that's why the question is very important. The fact of how it's being looked at and the fact what legislation-wise is possible, because if it wasn't possible, then it wouldn't happen.
Well,
and that's why we need to look at the legislation to amend the legislation and make it clear that that shouldn't be possible, because I recently have been elected, right? I'm here for a year and change. And if I look at the past election, and I'm not saying that I am pro going independent, don't get me wrong, I'm here to be the devil's advocate and have that conversation, because if it wouldn't be possible, then how is it happening? So then we have to look at where is it going wrong, because I cannot sit here and say, yes, it belongs to the party, but then on the other hand, we have been seeing in the past 10 years that it's happening, then something is being done wrong.
Yeah, it has become the norm.
No, but it cannot become the norm if it's not possible legislative-wise.
Because, of course, it has become the norm, because I guess no one has ever challenged that thing, okay? And you're talking about, you see, no, the first order of business within that whole construct is what? The party is allotted the seats.
I agree.
Okay? And after that, the party does what? Select. So a person, you as a parliamentarian, who haven't, in fact, as a matter of fact, there's a quota. You haven't reached the quota to start with. Okay? It's something, like I said, it's something we need to take a clear look. Okay? It's the misconceptualization of our parliamentary democracy. Okay. And with that, I would ask one of the other good gentlemen to come and
conclude that part, though, I don't fully agree with what has been brought forward, because if it wasn't possible, then it shouldn't happen. It couldn't have happened. So then indirectly it's being said that all these 10 years when people went independent, that it wasn't legally correct.
It's not legally correct. It's unconstitutional. It has not been challenged. There are a number of things that persons do that is not correct. but for whatever reason, they get by with it. Okay? It's misunderstanding. Okay? And here again, we can see now, that is a key point, I would think, that deserves to be what? Reform. Okay? Education. I would have said that at one point, but I've made it my business as a scholar of comparative government politics to study this. Okay? So I tend to understand it. And in understanding that, I have not only studied our parliamentary democracy, I've studied a presidential system as opposed to a parliamentary system we have. For Pete's sake, I have also studied communism. Doesn't make me a communist. But in order to understand it and to provide that to make sure or to get some sense of an evaluation, okay, it's imperative that we see all these different things. And we can look at other parliamentary systems and you see that they don't operate like this. They don't, and it's just understanding, and nothing wrong with that. We are learning, it's a learning process. We are evolving, okay? And we've sent out to the MP Otley, okay? Do you see this whole concept of proportional representation, something that you would like to see amended, reformed?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invite. Thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out to be here to show that you care about what is happening within your community. There's a couple of things. I would also like to acknowledge my deputy leader, MP Francisco La Cruz. Thank you for being here as well. There's a couple of things we have to look at. Just like in Parliament, when you're doing legislation, there's a rule book and guideline that you follow. What is the problem? That is the first thing. If I ask 90% of the population of St. Maarten, what is the problem with our electoral system, 90% of the population would say the elections. The elections. That is the biggest thing that people complain about. Not really the system, not really the voting, not really the placement of parliament, but the fact that you go to election, election, election. What is this caused by? An article in the Constitution, Article 59. Now, the issue with this is for us to get a clear understanding on this. An example, the Parliament no longer has confidence in the government. The Prime Minister, based on this article, has the ability to dissolve the Parliament. In my view, I look at it as your boss fires you, and therefore you return and fire your boss, or send all the employees home. That is a key element. Some of us has argued that that article should only be able to be used by the Prime Minister in the case that there's not a clear majority or there's a deadlock within Parliament. So, just to give a synopsis, Mr. Rumley speaks on political proportion, what do you say? Proportional representation, he speaks of. But when we look at what the explanation of that is, if you receive 10% of the amount of votes, then 10% of your party should represent in Parliament. That is not what happens at this moment. At this moment, you take the amount of votes cast, you divide it by the amount of seats, and based on that, you will have a quota, just to layman's term. 15,000 persons vote in this country. Therefore, 1,000 votes will be a seat. They will then add the amount of votes that your party gets. And based on that, you will know if you get 1 seat, 2 seat, 3 seat. And there's what you call a 𝒕𝒉𝒆𝒏𝒈𝒕𝒉𝒆𝒏𝒊𝒏𝒈. So if you get 2,000 votes, you get 2 seats outright. The next, if I get 2,000, just an example, 2,800, person gets 2,700, you go to the bigger party, and then you go to who is closer to getting the next seat. That is the system right now. Now, if I explain that to you,
Not cutting you across, okay?
mhm,
Isn't that proportional representation?
not
The mathematical the mathematical equation gives you the number of seats in proportion to the thing. That's a perfect. That's a
well,
that's a proportional.
it's a
thing.
proportion, but not
Yeah.
not the way that you were explaining, because you were saying that it's the. You said that if your party receives
If the party receives.
10%, yes, a percentage. But then we're basing exactly. You're basing on the amount of seats based on that division, because not necessarily I would receive 10% of of my seats in Parliament.
True, that is a proportional mathematical equation. Granted, a more efficient one would be the Hunt method, which is one of the methods that I proposed some years ago, that we change from this antiquated system with a 𝒚𝒐𝒊𝒏𝒈𝒕𝒉𝒆𝒏𝒊𝒏𝒈. It's a complicated mathematical.
But then my question would be to the people. Do you have a problem with the way that we are elected, or is your problem the fact of the ship jumping and going to election? That is what we have to understand. For me, right, we will never, we are evolving. We had electoral reform already. Before, you used to be elected based on the number that you fall on the list. In 1999, the lynch law was introduced. Ironically, in 2003, Lynch was the first person to feel the brunt of this lynch law, losing to 𝒚𝒐𝒖𝒓 by a couple of votes, right? So we are ever evolving. And then it goes to this. There was, I think, when they had the year of the Mexican standoff, where a study and a request was done to the Netherlands to stop ship jumping. And the Netherlands sent back and said, it's a violation of your democracy, your democratic right. Now,
How would you
this,
suggest to solve that
but
problem?
this now is where I have to tend to say, okay, then I agree with what you're saying. At some point then, we have to either, as members of parliament, right, and we also have what we call a constitutional court. We have to then challenge what is in the Constitution to what is the norm. And that is the only way we are going to get a clear consensus of what is going on. But at this moment, based on exactly what the Netherlands sent back, you cannot prevent someone from declaring independent because it's against their democratic right. Hence the reason now, pros and cons. We are, you have, and some may believe in him and some may not. So that what I'm about to say has nothing to do with my political feeling, but you have a Donald Trump, or not comparing the two, or a Hitler. And they're taking the country in a direction that you know you cannot agree with. We are given the democratic ability to say, hey, I don't agree, I am going to remove myself. And the country is not forced. The country is not forced to head in that direction that you know is not for you. And when we took our oath, the oath says you have to vote your conscience. Again, the argument is going to always be what is written to what is the norm. But as we go, we evolve. And that's why these discussions are so important, especially with a new parliament that understands these are years and years of problems. And we have the ability together to change it. But the thing we have to understand, me and my faction won't just change to change. The first problem we have to find out, what is the issue of the people? And if it's election specifically, then we revert back to the Constitution in that Article 59.
Touch on this Article 59. Okay. We have a lot of talk about Article 59, and which gives the Prime Minister the option to call elections. That is a common article within a parliamentary system of government. It's a common. See, the key here, why it is there, it provides what? That if, in the event that if you have a minority government, we have that in Parliament, you don't have enough members to what? To support the Council of Ministers, what? You cannot really pass a piece of legislation. The whole thing becomes stagnant. You must have a majority in order to what? To get your pieces of legislation passed. So therefore, that option is there. That if you find yourself in that position, then what? You call for new elections. Okay? And I'm going to let you do it. And we must be mindful now. What we are in a parliamentary system of government. The executive branch comes where? Directly out of the legislative branch. Mm-hmm. See, so there should not be, if all things are normal, that conflict. Because we tend to, and I guess this comes from the fact that prior to this, we were in a commission-planned government. Okay? So we just, a person who was an executive council member could also be a council member. So it was one big thing. But no, there's separation of powers here. And again, keeping in mind, in a parliamentary system of government, there's no separation of powers. It's implied. Because what? The executive branch comes there directly out of the legislative branch. Mm-hmm. So when you're governing, the Island Council, the Council of Ministers governing, they should be what? Governing on a program that has been designed by the coalition, that has the support of the legislative branch. And if you find yourself not in that, is what? Because you have not been caucusing. You're not on the same page. For whatever reason, you should be on the same page because you come directly out of that body. You see, we tend to do things that once we get elected, it becomes of I. No, not in a parliamentary system of government. If we're talking about a presidential system, yes, because what? You elect yourself. Yeah. Okay. So, so these are the things that we need to pay particular attention to. Our system is imperative that we understand what parameters, what we're working with. We're not in a parliamentary system. We're not in a presidential system. We are in a parliamentary system. And then we get clearly, and let's ask, MP Myers. Here again, what you see as your perception, how you perceive electoral reform.
Thank you.
And what would be your party first order of business? Let us do this, let us do that.
Thank you. And to all of the guests, thank you for coming out tonight and to remain informed. To my fellow panelists and colleagues in Parliament, good evening, and thank you, Mr. Romney, for this invitation. Interestingly enough, the Sualiga Action Movement, the SAM, that was our main topic, electoral reform. A couple of things we have to realize. This system that we have in St. Maarten is the very system that is in Curacao, Aruba, the Netherlands, and it works. It also requires a certain level of maturity. And while I agree with my colleague, and nephew, by the way, MP Otley, while I agree with him, where you cannot take away that fundamental right from a person to agree or disagree with the way or the direction your party or even the government is going. That fundamental right in Parliament as a citizen, as a representative of the people, is for issues of matters of principle. So, for example, and we see it in the United States, for example, and I'm not drawing a comparison to the United States, but I'm drawing a comparison to the issue, where there are those who are pro-life and those who are pro-abortion. And this is a heated issue. So if something like that was to come up in Parliament, where a member of Parliament, we're about to deal with, for example, the I'm going to call it that is the marijuana legislation. Now there may be some members of parliament that fundamentally believe that this legislation is not the direction they believe is in the best interest of St. Maarten, while there may be members who believe that, okay, this is the way to go. So based on that fundamental right, I believe that the person has a right to say, well, I cannot agree with this. And they will then, after exhausting all other avenues, they have the right to declare themselves independent on this principal matter. But the reason that we are talking about electoral reform today is because what is glaringly obvious is that in St. Maarten, the present system isn't working because the members, the elected members of parliament, and the ministers in some instances, instead of, and you said it there, Mr. Romney, instead of working as in conjunction with each other, we operate in silos. From the time we were elected, and we've heard members of parliament, not members of parliament, we've heard members who were elected in the past saying that I ran on this political party because my opportunities to get elected was better as opposed to a stronger political party. So as soon as they're elected, based on that very system that you highlighted, then they become a silo. And then it's no longer what's in it for the country, it's what's in it for me.
So I'll let you get back to, I just want to make this point and then you get back. Doesn't that tell us, okay, that it's not the system, it's the players?
Correct. But,
Okay?
but we,
And it's going to make it even more difficult because politics on St. Maarten is what? Personal politics.
correct.
It
And-
needs to be based on ideology. And
And the
until such time, St. Maarten cannot move forward. I've mentioned that several times.
And the very thing, that we are trying to fix, because had October the 10th, 2010 come about, and we would have had the normal course of elections. So 2010, 2014, 2018, 2022. As a matter of fact, this would be right now a pre-election year. If we had taken the normal course, we would not be having the discussion about electoral reform, because the system and those players within the system would have worked. What we are trying to fix now through legislation is how do we neutralize members, elected members operating within a silo, looking out for the benefits of themselves, as opposed to the general well-being of the island. And I think that's where we are now. I have contacted a law firm in Curacao who is presently working on my proposal to submit to Parliament where electoral reform is concerned. Personally, I prefer the system like the French side, where you have a runoff system that the people get what. So if the smaller parties, if they don't make it in the first round, the two larger parties contest, and then you have a party that is responsible for governing the country for the next 4 years. And if the people, and we saw that, for example, a couple years ago, Daniel Gibbs won overwhelmingly on the French side. Landslide election, he won. He did his 5-year term. The people of the French side basically said, okay, we didn't like the direction this was going, and they voted him out, and Louis Mussenden is in. That is democracy. That is the system that I prefer. But that system is going to take a long process because you are going to have to adjust your constitution for that. So what we are proposing is to tweak the present system. And just so I don't lose my train of thought, Mr. Romney, we speak about the party, which is true. And our system is a bit mixed up because, explain what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. You run on a party. You're elected as a party, but you take an oath as an individual. You don't take an oath as the representative of that political party. You take the oath as a representative of the people of St. Maarten. But then you go to Parliament immediately after, and then you're divided in factions. So then you have the faction of the up. So then the party system again is applied. The party system again is applied as while you're sitting in Parliament. So then it's the up, and you mentioned it here, the leader of the up, the representative of the URSM, the representative of the SAM, and then you are still expected to operate within the parameters of a party, but an individual. And I think these are the things. How do you legislate behavior? I think that's where we are. Because, and history has shown us, I think, it was mentioned, the people are tired of the elections, but they're tired of the elections because of the misrepresentation by the politicians. And mind you, the persons who have declared themselves independent in the past were not representative, were not persons that necessarily carried the majority of the vote. That the masses could say, well, okay, Sarah declared herself independent. Well, she's the leader of the Democratic Party. She commands these amount of votes. In those days, it was Theo Heiliger, William Malley. These were persons that were willing to work along, regardless of how rough the waters got. The persons who were declaring themselves independent was the persons who was representing 1% of the voting population of St. Maarten. And that's where the crux of our problem came from.
And if we follow our Constitution, Article 47, proportional representation, that is clear. And that's what it's just a misconceptualization.
And I'm going to take you up. I'm going to take you up on that because we are three legislators, and I think it'll be a good initiative for us to present it to the Constitutional Court to get a ruling on it, to see if the declaring of yourself independent is constitutional or is it unconstitutional. But we already had a ruling from the Netherlands, because there again.
What was that ruling?
That you cannot take away someone's right, their human right to disagree, to say I do not agree. And again, I go back to the point where and there are certain topics where, as a matter of euthanasia. And we're a growing society. So things that we may not face today, eventually is going to come. Someone has, in the Netherlands, it's a common practice. Someone is terminal with cancer, they can declare that they want to be euthanized. They don't want to go ahead and suffer. Something like that comes to St. Maarten. You may have members of parliament, and for example, let's take the URSM. And why I said URSM, the Minister of Public Health is the representative of the URSM. He comes from the URSM party. And he agrees, for example, to euthanasia based on humanitarian and no suffering. But members of the SAM and the UP, we don't agree with that. We are Christian people who believes that God brought you into this world and he will take you when he's ready first. A principal decision, not because you should not declare yourself independent because you didn't get the portfolio of economic affairs, for example, in a negotiation, or you didn't get. And this is what was the order of the day.
And that's what I keep on saying. The problem here, misconceptualization. We do not fully understand the concept of proportional representation. I mean, and here too, the system, parliamentary system of government. There are norms and regulations that works. And this system is true, it works. We have seen that on St. Maarten, we have more problems with our system of government than most, if not all, of our cities. Because what? for whatever reason, and now one can say we are spoiled by the commission plan government for, we understand that, and we have not taken enough time out to understand our parliamentary system of government. And when you can vote how and we often use the word vote your conscience. I don't like that at all. Because imagine if all persons within in Parliament vote the conscience. Total chaos. Total chaos.
But I think...
Okay, so the whole concept, even if you go back to the explanatory notes, when they refer back now to that order, I forget exactly which article, and there's no way it says vote your own conscience, but that's how we interpret it. Okay? If you go back to the explanatory notes, it will tell you that we understand that you are part of a party, and that must be taken into consideration. We said, and again, the Constitution, the third order clearly said, yeah, you cannot be coerced into voting a certain area. And that's great.
But then, Mr. Romney, it's something that we need to realize. In the Constitution, it does mention, though, that you are a representative of the people. In this same Constitution, it speaks on parties. Now I would like to ask the public a question. Do you really think our system truly represents the people? No, and I'll tell you why. Based on the same system that I stated, 15,000 votes, it takes 1,000 to get a seat. I can run, if I am a sole party, I get 999 votes. Sounds impressive, right? I will not be elected. But based on the system that we have, Teo Helaga polls 2,000 votes, somebody comes in with 120 votes, and he represents the people over me with 999 votes. And we expect the best interests of the people to be taken up. We expect the people to be engaged. So then now maybe we do have an issue. Because what is really the representatives of the people? And my colleague just said it, that the people, if you look at, I say, the people that have been throwing down government are people who got in on the strength of the others.
And therefore, here again, it's not about he. The system is a party system, not an individual. You see? But I guess hold on here. I guess we can just switch over now to the general public, because
before she asks a question, one of the things to show that culturally who we are as a people, and that has manifested itself in our elections over and over again. You've seen what has happened to the persons that have declared themselves independent by the electorate in any following election. So it shows the dissatisfaction that the electorate have with when you do those kind of things in Parliament.
Granted, because at the end of the day, it was not about that person. It was about what? The party list.
Good evening, everyone. Just thinking, my mind's like all over the place. But to me, first, if our independent members didn't get all the perks that they got, there mightn't be a desire to go independent, because now you become basically a fraction on your own. You get staff, you get a whole bunch of perks that the electoral really don't even understand beforehand. There's so much that we are not educated on. And I'm going to use Mr. Otley's example. Maybe we need to change the system. Although it's a party system, then the first 15 members who get the most votes are the 15 people who go in and represent the country, and then figure out then how we get our ministers. Because to me, we still do not have a separation. We talk that it is supposed to be separate, but when parties appoint ministers, there is no separation.
That's it.
So there is so many things in this whole process that we adopted, we accepted, We have seen how it has failed miserably, because I think we've had 12 elections in 15 years. So we are not doing anything for us as a country other than wasting money, putting the wrong people in there because it's a popularity something, and it's not benefiting the country in any form or fashion. So I think we need to start all over again, have these discussions, and figure it out from day one what is going to work for the population. It's not about the 15 members of parliament.
What we need, and I clearly understand what you're saying, and I can sympathize with you. The fact here is that what? We have a parliamentary system, and we're not going by the rules and regulation of a parliamentary system. Nothing is wrong with the game, it's how we play the game. Okay? If you want to talk about having a list with 15, 10 members, and then we all vote for that list, good. What you're now talking about, what? Creating what? A one-party system. We know where that leads. Okay? On the other hand, what would be, and I guess that's an option, is go to the presidential system. Because we should know within a parliamentary system, there's no separation of powers. It's implied. So you're not going to get a difference. If you want that separation of powers, then you go to a presidential system. There how you'll have the executive branch and the legislative branch independently elected. Okay? And I think it's important that we just should not focus on trying to put some ad hoc thing together. These are systems of government has been working. Okay? And we, for whatever we're trying to concoct something, okay, put in this, pull out that. We try to move the goalpost to suit ourselves. And who's going to suffer from that? The people. I assure you, whatever we try to concoct somewhere, it's going to fail. Our thing is misconceptualization. We have not taken enough time to understand what governing is all about. We have not taken enough time, and I can say that for 99.9% of the members of parliament, the council ministers. No, we're thinking of us. I want to be the kingpin, and that's why they go independent. They go independent because they want to become the kingpin, and then they can dictate here or there. And and person is saying, yeah, well, they do it. Yes, of course we do it. I would yet to say anyone can show me any way within the Constitution, within our statutory orders, where that is permissible. It's unconstitutional from head to toe. Okay? We do it. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff happens that we do, but it's not right.
Mr. Romney, just to chime into that point very short, right? Seeing that point keeps on being brought up in regards to it being unconstitutional and that the law does not give that option. Seeing that I'm also a lawyer of profession, if we are of the opinion that part needs to change, of course, legislative part, we need to change that. I have to say that I do not agree with what you're bringing forward, because the law states, and I think my colleagues brought it forward as well, maybe in the words that you have mentioned, it doesn't state it with those exact words, but indirectly in the law, seeing that it's mentioned that as a member of parliament, you will not be a member of parliament anymore if you, for example, pass away, if you decide to quit on your personal feelings, okay, I don't want to be a member of parliament anymore, or if you have been convicted. And that indirectly mentions that it's a personal title. If that article wasn't there, and I think I don't remember the article exactly, but there is an article, how does the membership of a member of parliament ends? And there are those 3 pointers that I mentioned. So that's a personal title. If we now would like to make sure that that option is not there anymore, the only way to change that is by changing the legislation. And as I mentioned as well, I think the main issue is, and I've said it during my campaign trail, and I keep on saying is, that we need to educate our people and inform our people, okay, who do you elect as your members of parliament? Who are the people that have postulated themselves? Because mentioning, for example, to go through the system of, okay, the ones that get the highest votes, that will also can create a system of, for example, vote buying. Do you want that? Because if I have the highest votes, then I will get in. So I will do everything to get the highest votes. That we have seen that as well. So I do not believe that that is the way to go about it. What I do believe is that we need to inform and empower our people by explaining, okay, who do we want to see as our representatives? Because once you elect people that are there not for personal gain, you will also avoid the ship jumping. You will also have people in place that would have a certain mindset that will think, okay, I'm here for the people, and what kind of consequences will it have if I take certain steps? Will I bring down government? What kind of consequences can that have? Other than that, in regards to electoral reform, we also need to look at the broader topic. Who are the ones that can vote? Should people in the Netherlands, for example, students, should they be able to vote? Should people who left St. Maarten but have lived in St. Maarten for a certain amount of years, should they be able to vote? Those are other things that we need to look at that electoral reform also consists of. And by adapting and changing the legislation and including those type of pointers that I just brought forward, that also will create a more stable system, and that will make sure that it will also avoid the current status that we are in. But to mention that it's unconstitutional, I cannot agree with you because it has a legislative basis, and I stand on that. And the only way to change it is by reforming it through the legislation.
And the only way to change it is through reforming, right?
Yes.
But again, and I keep on saying that. Mm-hmm. Get a clear definition of what the Constitution says, what electoral proportional representation, because that's it. The Constitution, Article 47, it clearly states how Parliament's going to be elected.
Indeed.
By proportional representation.
But that is before that proportional representation, and I find it's important for the public to understand that. Proportional representation takes place before election. So after election, you have the proportional representation. Once you are elected, you are there on personal title, and you need to make sure that you adhere to the oath that you took. That's how I see it.
Proportional representation does not take place after. That's not an implementation process. That is the law. Our electoral system is based on proportion. So Parliament, the whole construct of Parliament, is based on that the Parliament should consist of persons or seats based on the proportion of the votes they receive. That's it. So, of course, there's a mathematical equation which determines how that is done, which is the electoral ordinance. Okay? And we have questions as to that mathematical equation. I have preferred, and I've spoken about, to use the D'Hondt method, but that's another story for another time. But our system is by proportional representation. And you go back to the thing, it says clearly, right? In other words, you say a party that wins 10% should hold 10%. So there's no gray area here. And it's only right if we have 10% of the people voted for a particular party. And again, it's not about the individual. It talks about what? A party list. The first order of business is what? Elect a party. And then the party is allotted 5 or 10 seats. Then the next order of business would then, from that list, would be selected. As I think MP Meyer said, prior to 10-10-10, or rather part of our commission plan government system, okay, with the lynch law, what the lynch law did, and there's nothing miraculous about that. We had a closed system, which is used today in the Netherlands, in Curaçao, Aruba, where the party leader is allowed to rank the number of persons. And based on the rank, then you would collect. We have gone now to an open list where then you'll be ranked based on the number of votes you received. And that was basically what he found it good. It was more democratic, so to speak, and probably is. However, one must understand that has put us in turmoil. That has not only seen that you're competing with a different party, you're competing within your own party. So one can argue clearly, changing to that closed, to that open system has caused more confusion than it has solved. See, and like I said, I understand it's a difficult thing to understand. One have to reset. One have to move away from your subjective moment and look at you objectively. And I agree, it's not difficult, it's not easy.
A blessed evening. I have sat here and I wanted to jump out of my seat, I think 100 times. I am MP Francisco La Cruz. I am the deputy leader to the United People's Party. And I would have one question concerning that proportionate representation. When the public vote, you vote for an individual on a list. You do not vote for the party. If what is being suggested, then our system should have been you vote for a party. You vote for the United People's Party because you believe in the ideology of the United People's Party, and it should not then matter who you are voting for. You are voting for a party if it's totally based on what the narrator is bringing across, talking about the party. Now, I do understand, and I wholeheartedly agree with the leader of my party. The problem is not how we're voted. The party is that we continue to end up in elections. And personally, I would like a raise of hand with those that agree with that is exactly the problem. And if you don't, then I would like to hear exactly then what is the problem, because that is what we have continuously been faced with and perfectly put together. People that represent less than even 1% are the ones that end up leaving. But that comes from the fact that they were on the list and someone checked on their name and they got more votes than the others on that list to end up on or in on a seat in Parliament. So if that was not the case, and I would agree only if that would be a change, that you vote for a party, and then how does the party then decide on who goes into Parliament? That would then be another discussion. And the system that was there before, for example, I never worried about numbers. I loved number 23. I fought for number 23. I would then not go on a list knowing that a party can never get 23 seats, because that would then mean that I would never have the opportunity to be elected. So how do we decide that then? So again, the problem, and the problem is not the system, in my opinion. The problem is the egocentric persons that end up in Parliament and talk about me, 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 me. I have given my leader, before even deciding to run, I've always said, hey, this is how I think, and I give you carte blanche as long as you're going in that direction. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, if one day I think the party is not going in that direction, I will definitely think I will be the first member of Parliament to give up his seat. That is what I would do, because I did not get a seat on my own. If I receive the quota of 1,000, then I do represent one seat in Parliament. And that way I will say, okay, you know what? I don't agree with the way you're going, so this is a seat that I earned. But otherwise, I would need a concession from at least 1,000 representatives of 1,000 votes on my party to be able to make that decision.
Just let me make one point and I'll come to you. And yeah, we keep on hearing that it come election time that you vote for the individual. Folks, please take a candid look at the electoral ordinance. Take a candid look at what proportional representation means. You do not vote for the individual. You vote for the party. Of course, I mean, you're not assigned to Parliament based on how much votes you get. No, you go based on how many votes the party gets.
The question is, who do you vote for?
Okay, if it says, oh, good point. That is the question. Okay, you on party A list, right? And you get 300 votes. I am on party B list, right? I get 900 votes. However, that 900 votes that I received is less than the party quota. So therefore what? Do I go to Parliament? No.
I think I can shed some light on this.
You go to Parliament, okay, based on the number of the quota that the party receives. And then the party then, there's another mathematical equation that determines what? The party quota. And based on the party quota, you get in. So it's not you, the person. You, and it clearly states in there, you are a representative of the party. So that's it. We continue to feeling, well, it's the individual. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, one person said too, that when you swear to in Parliament, okay, when you're swearing, unfortunately, folks, you swear to the King and to uphold the Constitution, point blank.
Mr. Romney, I think from listening to the discussion, I think what we are doing, which is preventing us from actually reaching at a point where we can have a constructive, forward-moving discussion, is we are looking at things in black and white. Whether it is the party, whether it is the individual, it could be both. Whether it is the system or it's a parliamentary system, it can be both. So for example, if we are talking about proportional representation, if you have over 200 people going up in election, because notice there's no cap on the amount of parties that you can have, nor the amount of individuals that you can have contesting an election. How am I, as a person, for example, in Dutch Quarter, going to ensure that I get the representation that I need? And that goes right back to the numbers, the example that MP Otley made of you could get 900 votes and it doesn't necessarily guarantee you that you are in there. But that 900 is a % of the population. So how is it really proportional representation if my 900 is a higher percentage of the votes than the person with the one something that is in there? And if we are selecting an individual, it is, I think it is not a right way to think about it as saying that we select individuals alone. People select based on a party. Because people will say in conversations that if you were on another party, I would have voted for you. And then some people would say, oh, if this party had this person, then I would vote for you. So I think we're looking at it that the Constitution is 100% correct. The Constitution was written. It might have flaws. And if we're looking at it as only one side or the others, we are basically blindsiding ourselves from being able to make a proper constitutional electoral reform that will truly represent the people. I'll give you an example. There are parliamentary systems where people are represented by districts. So you have parliament, yes, You have the executive, yes, but individuals are represented by districts. And in those parliamentary systems, individuals find that they have more say in the government because I know exactly who my representative of my district is that I can go to for what is happening in my district. So for example, if I'm living in St. Peter's and sewage water is running on the street, I know my parliamentary representative for St. Peter's. And that person is in parliament to represent me. So I will go to them, and in parliament, I expect them to bring up my concerns. So I think if we really want to open up the discussion so that we can get a true, real idea, because this is a system in the Caribbean, all of our systems were handed down from the Europeans. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for us. So we have to look at our reality and cultivate something that makes sense for our reality. And the only way we can truly do that is by assuming that all of it might have flaws. And look at all of the areas that might be the flaws and look to fix it. Because if I get one last point about the percentage, what if a party gets 16.5% of the votes? You cannot have 16.5% in the parliament. So if we're looking at it like, okay, the constitution says 10%, the constitution only, the parliament is only whole numbers. But if you're doing a pure percentage can be decimals. So if we have 15.5, how do we allocate the 15.5, which goes exactly what MP 𝒚𝒂𝒄𝒉 mentioned about the residual, and how much of that really pertains to the 10% that you make there. So my final point about this is an open discussion requires us to look at all aspects and do not assume that any of those aspects are infallible. Thank you.
That's exactly what, that's exactly what we're doing tonight. You have just justified what we're doing here tonight. We're having that conversation where we can determine what we see as the cardinal issues that needs to be amended, reformed. Clearly, what you said with the in terms of, you're in district, etc., right? Our system is what? We have one electoral district. One electoral district. What you're talking about here is to have a multiple electoral district. Good. That's an open. That's an idea for reform. You see. So, yeah, we have achieved our objective here. We open in that conversation, so we all can, be part of that process. So now you can let your representative know that, wait a minute, we prefer a reform that would lead us to a multiple electoral district. See? So, and yeah, that's an option.
But I think the only, okay, you want to go ahead?
No, I think you were going to say the same thing, but maybe we should have that discussion because I came here tonight to hear what would the public want. I hope more people would have showed up, but the people that are here today, what do they find that is lacking? Where can we as representatives make sure that, okay, we should look into, okay, the ship jumping, is that something that we should look into? Currently, the system that we have in place, party versus individual, is that the topic that we should look into? The fact of voting of our students in the Netherlands, for example, should they be able to vote? I know, for example, students in the United States, they can vote. In the Netherlands, they cannot vote. Should that be something we should look into, electoral reform? What are the other points that we should look into? I think that is a discussion that I'm looking forward to have tonight, and thank you for that, because that's also the reason that I came, not to have the discussion on the Constitution versus how you should read the Constitution, because that's like a debate you can have all night, and it's the view of the person. So I would like to head into that direction, if I'm being really honest.
And when you made your point pertaining to dealing with ship jumping, I see the lady in the back. You said yes when she asked, with the thing on your head, when she asked about dealing with independent members, right? Should we curb that? You said yes. Now I would like to ask this question. Would independent members be an issue if we didn't have election? Would that still be an issue for you? So a member pulls their support and it doesn't cause election. So, example, I pull my support, I am not in line with the coalition. I pull my support. I know what the Constitution says, but I'm asking this now. Forget the Constitution for a minute. This is real life. If a member pulls their support and the government continues or a transition is made without an election, is that still an issue? That is what I want to know. Is the root cause of most of our issues election? No. So you're invested if someone goes independent, right? Now, don't equate independent with what is normally happening. No, exactly. Because what normally happens, someone goes independent, and after the independence, we see election. Hence, we had 7 elections in these amount of years. So when I, as a politician, when I go to someone's door, right, the number one complaint I hear is, election again? I ain't doing this again. I ain't voting no more. I tired of all you. Election, election, election. How much elections? So I can only speak for me. What I hear from the people, what I hear from the constituents is the election. So that is why the first thing my party member and I said is, then we have to look at the article that causes the election. Because when Mr. Rumley spoke, he referred back to that being used when there's a minority. But if there's a clear majority that now controls the parliament, exactly. Why are we going to election? So that is why, now this might just be my preference, but I am asking you as the people, what is your frustration? And only when we know your frustration, then we can target. Because as my colleague said, we cannot legislate human behavior, but we can legislate to fix the problem. Thank you.
Oh no, I don't have. Good evening, everyone. I don't have a question anymore because you kind of corrected it. Because I wanted to make the distinction of what has happened since 2010. We had 7 elections and 12 different governments. So not because, so there have been people that have gone independent that didn't cause a government to change. So that's what we also have to keep in mind. But we have had 7 elections and 12 different governments, which means that we had 12 different cabinets where it was 12 times that ministers were sworn in. So that's the issue really in the structure that I see personally, because of the fact that you never get an opportunity to govern. And every time new ministers go in, everyone wants to put their stamp on it rather than keep the overall, let's say, governing program going, or if it was ideology based. So you corrected it, but I wanted to say that because I wanted to make sure that it was clear for everyone that it was not 12 elections, which is 12 governments is just as bad as 12 elections, but just to make sure that we make sure that we distinguish between the two of them. That was all. Because you corrected it, so I didn't have to do it anymore.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. And while you get the mic to him, I just want to make another little statement here. Folks, and MP Otley talk about elections. Folks, nothing is wrong with elections.
No, but before, yeah.
Absolutely nothing is wrong with elections. Elections is the democratic thing. Okay? If you put into place a government and it doesn't have the majority to rule, okay, then you have to go to election. That's part of the democratic process.
Correct. I agree. But
right? So we
not to cut you off. I think a little when, and the gentleman here said something. A lot of the constitutions and a lot of the laws that are in these islands are basically copy-paste from from our colonials.
Yeah, Westminster model of parliamentary
Right.
system.
Okay. So, but those laws that they made for them was based on what their constituents was telling them. We are of a different culture. Right? And now, when you go back, for example, when you go back to our island council system, where you had dualism, it may have not been the most practical, but it worked. It worked. And those were still parliamentary procedures. You still had so you had legislators and the legislators in the executive branch. It was a collective responsibility, but it worked. And it worked for a long time. And in that system, there were people who declared themselves independent, and no elections was called. A new government was formed, and that new government took the administration, and then when that term was up, it went back to the people, and the people spoke. So, again, any electoral reform, and that's why I'm glad of a dialogue like this, because any electoral reform that you're going to have to hear from the people what they want. Because while we are representatives, who are we representatives of? The people. And we as representatives, that changes. So today, maybe Frankie Myers or Maarten, Shamira Roseberg, tomorrow, it will be Richardson, Johnson, and Brooks, you know, and that's the crux. And to mention lastly, to mention what MP Lacroix said, and you are applying it legislatively, not practically, but people vote for individuals. People vote, I know my friend in the back there, but he's my best friend, but he would tell you that, and this is when I used to run DP, we came from a national, at that time was the SPA, we came from an SPA lineage politically. His father, my brother, was the founders of the SPM, but he would say, I am not voting for the DP, I'm voting for Frankie. And the DP ultimately got the vote, which you're talking about legislatively. Legislatively. The DP benefited from the vote. But what ultimately was, when I did not run in politics, he didn't vote for the Democratic Party.
And that's why I said we have to put things in context.
And this is why these discussions are important to understand what it is the people themselves want, what they are tired of. And they're tired of the elections, but they're also tired, which by their punishment of those who declare themselves independent in the polls shows that St. Maarten people don't tolerate people who ship jump.
And like I said, much of that, what you said, is correct. Right? And that I wished that more of our political party leaders had taken advantage of this opportunity. Equally, more of our citizens have taken advantage of this opportunity to let your political leadership know what's the problem, what you see as the problem. And I must say, and I commend and appreciate very much these three parliamentarians, legislators that have come out here. Go back again. You said, you talk about the commission plan, you know, back then, we person declare independence, we never had elections. Here again, we must put it in the context. The island regulation at that time, or the island regulation period, did not allow for new elections, period.
Correct. But
it was stipulated there. Secondly, okay, what we in now, as a constituent state of the kingdom, okay, we have moved beyond the parameters that commission plan government would govern. Commission plan government cannot work now today. We have no responsibilities.
I understand that. But the tweaking that we're talking about could also be part that if in the event that the government, someone withdraws their support, for example, on a principal reason, that you cannot call for elections.
A prime example, when MP Myers stated about the Island Council days, majority of who is here said It worked. They said it worked. Their minds did not focus on independence. It did not focus on government shifting. Their mind knew that this government or apparatus ran until election was supposed to be called. When you listen to majority of the population that call in on the radio station, they say, we need to go back to the Island Council days. But what he just proved to us was the same behavior was happening, but the systematic approach of us going or dissolving Parliament was not there. So therefore, the mentality or the mind frame of the people felt that we had governing, we had time. Election was not every 2 years. So it goes back to legislatively, you're correct, but I'm talking reality.
And you know
It's
why?
in practical, it's a difference.
Do you know why it worked back then? The legislature and the executive branch was one and the other. I voted, okay, as an Island Council member, I would suggest a piece of legislation, or to the extent that we could have, and then I will move over and take the seat of the executive branch and implement it. That's the reason why. The whole concept, as we see it back then, and it worked, I've been through it, it was a buddy system. If I have a particular portfolio, you don't mess with it, and I wouldn't mess with yours.
That's not true.
That, of course it is.
Definitely.
Of course it
I've
is.
worked in the system
Well,
for 8 years.
yeah, I know.
So
I know you
see,
worked in the system
but
for
that's-
8 years.
That,
okay?
and,
I have lived the system. I've studied the system.
Yeah, you studied, but I actually worked in it as a member of the Island Council and a member of the Executive Council.
Okay. So
And
therefore-
one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that, and when you say it, is the Executive Council carried a collective responsibility.
Yeah, they were supposed to execute.
But they carried
Wait.
a collective responsibility. So while,
yeah, give
for
me
example, I was the commissioner of telecom, if there was anything, so that will be the phase. So if there is questions or projects as it relates to telecom, of course, I will be the person that would be asked about those questions. But once you got into the Executive Council, and you had to make the decision, you needed the support of your constituents for it to pass.
You mean
Whereas now, where you're talking about, this is my little kingdom, for example, now that is more prevalent. Because when you're a minister, you don't need the collective support. And that's why we have had persons that ran an election, joined the government, declared themselves independent, joined the government, got portfolios to put who they want, to carry out their agenda. Not the agenda for the country, but the agenda for them, so to speak. And not to say that it wasn't done back then, but that system worked. It is undeniable because at that time, you cannot take away the fact that the government was able to govern. They were able to govern. Now, what we've had elections 2010, 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020, 2024, 2024. That's the run of elections that we've had. But it's because we have operated, we have not adjusted that it is a collective responsibility between Parliament and the Council of Ministers, and we've operated within silos. This is my ministry. This is that's your minister. That minister. I have the SAM faction have 1 seat in Parliament, in 1 seat, but I have 7 ministers because those 7 ministers represent my faction, and I defend, because we have a coalition agreement and we are part of a whole. That's how I see it. Not that the Minister of Justice is my minister and that's it. No, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Public Health, the Minister of 𝒚𝒂𝒄𝒉, and right now, because I carry the political responsibility as well for all of the ministers. And once we start to think in that when we start to think in that term, then this country will start to move forward. All the people are asking for is that who they elect to govern, govern.
And that's exactly what I'm saying, is that we tend not to follow or adhere to the parliamentary system of government. And we let, I think someone
I
else
stole
had
it
one?
from him
Yeah.
really quickly. I stole it from him really quickly because I wanted to bring something in perspective for the group. I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the governing program? Anyone? No. So if you look at the governing program for 2024, 2028, when you look at electoral reform, the first thing on it is about the screening law. But when you listen to the discussion in here tonight, and we listen to Ms. Carolyn, for instance, who says something along the lines of, well, when we look at Parliament and, you know, people go into things for what they can get, and actually MP Myers also said it, you know, some people focus more on what they can do for themselves as opposed to what is in the greater good of the country. And then, you know, there's a conversation that happened about whether or not if you go independent in Parliament, you don't get the rights as if you were elected with a party. So you don't get the benefits, as in you have faction staff. And I think that's fair because it keeps you in the control of where you were arguing in terms of, well, the seat is the party, you know, if you go independent, whether we're not going to go back into the constitution dialogue about that, legalities of it, but you have to see how to sort of restrict greedy behavior is how I want to refer to it. But I also wanted to say that I hope that with this discussion that we could have a follow-up on it, because right now I'm not trying to point out I'm not trying to point out something negative. What I'm pointing out is a disconnect of when you're talking to the public and when you're and what is happening currently in government. So not one person tonight has talked about the screening law, because the screening law affects the persons who are in government, if you get what I'm saying, or the screening law affects government formations. So is the screening law in the best interest of the public that we're representing here today? No, it's not. They don't care. And the whole point I wanted to bring that up is just that no one has read the governing program, and it's been published for 2 months, and then no one is bringing up what is in the governing program. Now, I'm part of the coalition. Again, I'm not pointing out the good or the bad. I'm just giving you the reality of a little disconnect that still exists. And the point of me standing up here is saying, I hope there's a follow-up where we use the recommendation. Gentlemen, I'm so sorry, I don't know your name. That we're talking about, you know, looking at things black and white, that we talk about the things that have been discussed today as part of electoral reform that's coming from this side of the room as opposed to the representatives in government. And it's a suggestion to you to continue that dialogue, because otherwise we will continue to have the disconnect. Because the other thing is you hear persons talking about, well, the reason that we're upset, like the MPs were saying, is that we're sick of voting because government's always falling, again, for greedy reasons. And yes, we can't legislate behavior, but if you think about ways to sort of, it's not very democratic, you restrict a little bit the behavior that leads to the, instability, then maybe we will actually get somewhere with it. So I'm going to give him. I promise not to be long.
I'm not going to be long at all. Mr. Julio Romney, when I look at this whole room, I see just maybe less than 100 people. And less than 100 people do not represent the electorate of St. Maarten. They don't. You know, I heard MP Otley talking about, yeah, we got the people here, and they're going to discuss what they want to discuss so we can go further. But when I look at the people here, it's not even 100 persons, and the electorate is about 23,000 people. And we got to get people here. And the people have to know that these sessions or these town hall meetings are very, very important for everybody in St. Maarten. We sometimes just leave out and say, we're not going to tell people to come because this is not going to be something that they're really interested in. But guess what? We got to be interested in these things because it affects every one of us. And I'm going to go to something that MP Rosberg said, and I think MP Meyer said it too. And I want to say it very, very importantly. When she was talking, she said, electoral reform is very high on the agenda. And I heard MP Meyer said the same thing. And this is something I'm hearing since 2010. That electoral reform is high on the agenda, and we're going to get this done because so and so and so. Every politician is telling you that, but yet you're not seeing nothing. So my point to MP Rosberg and to MP Myers is, when this electoral reform is going to be addressed or changed, etc., for us to be able to take this to the next level. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Just allow me to interject very quickly. Coincidentally, the other night, Mr. Rumley was trying to get in contact with me, and he couldn't get in contact with me. And then finally, he got me, and I called him back, and he said, I'm just doing a follow-up confirmation if you're going to come to the this meeting tonight. And I said, of course. I said, I cannot not come to this meeting because this was the piercing tip of the sword on which the SAM was launched, electoral reform. So to answer your question, Jeffrey, I cannot sit for 4 years and not do anything about electoral reform because this is the foundation in which the party that I founded was built on. And it has started. And to correct you, it couldn't have started, talk about electoral reform couldn't have started as far back as 2010, because 2010 we had just gotten over. Everything was fine up until 2014. Yeah, so, I mean, but that's just a technicality. But what I'm saying is, indeed, the reason that we are having a discussion today about electoral reform is because to me, the immaturity and the individualism by our representatives that have plagued the present system. Because mind you, the same system works in Aruba, it works in Curacao, it works in the Netherlands. The same system. Same system. So, and they're not talking about electoral reform. As a matter of fact, Aruba is now trying to discuss whether they're going to go over to the lynch law. So where they're going to propose to go over to the lynch law, whereas, and again, that in and of itself has, in everything that you present, because we are humans, and there is nothing that is going to be foolproof. And because I was one of those persons that benefited from the lynch law. I was on the Democratic Party. I was position number 12 on the Democratic Party in 1995. I was the third highest vote getter with 202 votes. But I was position number 12. And there were persons that got way less votes than me, but they were in the top 5, and they went into the Island Council. But by the next election, when the lynch law was applied, I was still the third highest vote getter, and I was in. But again, it came with a certain responsibility. And that is what is missing from, again, you cannot use, my former colleague used to say, you cannot use the political parties as a bus to get to your destination, and once you get to your destination, you don't need a bus anymore.
And I know you've been dying to speak, so
Sorry.
Yes,
I just want to address the matter too, because I see streams and so forth, and I'm a person that I don't leave things to chance or interpretation. When I speak of the people, yes, I will speak of the people, because while they may not represent 10% of the voting population, they represent the voting population. And all it takes is one person to spark the interest of another. And I guarantee you, the next time Mr. Rumley does this, you will see much more persons. Because when they go home and speak to their sister, their brothers, their families, and ask, how was tonight? They will be able to say, there was dialogue. So I encourage you to continue Let us do what we have to do until this room is full, until we can't even come here no more. We need to go outside. But for the people, we will represent. So definitely.
Okay, I think the lady.
Okay,
There's a lady in the back.
good night. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm glad for the information that has been shared. There's lots of things that were said tonight that I also agree with, because when we look at electoral reform, we also need to look at Article 59, and I would always question, why can't the government reshuffle after something has happened? It doesn't always need to go into an election. I also agree with the concept of what we would say in St. Maarten ship jumping. I do agree that it leads into political suicide. But then, when you hear the study from the Netherlands, I also agree with that, because it is our democratic right to run in an election. And it's also, I laugh because everyone thinks that they can easily get 1,000 votes in an election, and I always laugh about it. It is not as easy as we think it is. And because of that, I agree with MP Myers when he said that we need to have a runoff election, because then it will prove to me, boy, I don't think you can get 1,000 votes like your mind is telling you, but it is your democratic right to still try. Now, having said all that, the MP Otley just asked the question, what is the problem? Is it an election, or is it the ship jumping? What is the problem? Now, for me, the problem is having an election too soon. Now, my friend over here, and I always will say it, it was mentioned how much it costs to have an election. That's like 900,000 guilders. I think that's way too much if we're having it too soon. So now my question to you, MP Otley, because for me, having an election too soon is the problem that I would bring to you with if you ask me that. So my suggestion would be, or a solution to the problem, I think could be, and I'm going to take it from an education perspective. Right now, we're having exams. Now, a rule of the exams in the education for the Dutch high school students from ETE is that once the exam has started at 7:30, you cannot leave the room until 45 minutes after. So if the exam starts at 7:30, you cannot leave, even if you're finished early, because you're smart, you know what you're doing, you cannot leave the exam until 8:16. So now, my question to you is, or can it be a possible solution that if you think that your values are not aligned with your party anymore, I think it's your right, your democratic right, to say, listen, for my mental health, for the values, my Christian values, maybe I should separate myself. Can it be a solution that there's a timeline for this to happen? Maybe they should serve 3/3 of their 4-year period before they can say, listen, I've had enough, or I got to go. I don't think, and I always disagree with the ship jumpers who disrupt government to do it. I don't have a problem with you leaving because your values have changed, but I personally believe government should not be disrupted for you wanting to do it at this time. There are others who left their parties, and some of you have left parties, and I applaud you for when you leave it. You did not disrupt government, you did not do anything, but come the next election, you came, I'm not no more aligned with this party, but I'm with this one. I respect that from politicians. So the question again is, can a timeline be enforced that would limit the amount of ship jumping?
So thank you. Thank you very much. So you're actually on point. A couple of things we have discussed. One was putting a parameter of, like you said, maybe 3 years. Then the people know for sure, we're not going to election. But then there's a possibility of, so just for those who need to understand, when you're doing a law, right? A law average in government takes about 52 to 56 weeks. There's different bodies. You go to the SED, the Social Economic Council, they advise you, you come back, you get different advice, you go to the Council of Advice. And when I say come back, don't think it comes back in a week, sometimes 3 months, 6 months. It goes to the Council of Advice, They render their advice. You have to adjust based on that. Then based on that, you go to Parliament, you debate, etc., etc. But within all of that, they are looking at human rights, all of those type of stuff. So then we have to look at if setting a timeline disrupts the person's democratic right. Okay? So then I'm forcing you for 3 years to deal with the issue. Now, again, these are things that we would see pragmatic and say, you know what, it should work. But then you would be surprised on the advice that we get back. Hence the reason that we were looking at specifically the article, because where we realize there's a misinterpretation or it's based on who is reading it, I always say that. There's one law, but you have a prosecutor, you have a lawyer. And both of them look at the law and apply it how they want to apply it. That's the reality of the life. And based on Article 59, the explanatory notes, I am of the opinion, and this is an opinion, that it should only be invoked if there is not a clear majority in Parliament. So which means if I go independent, just like in the Island Council days, it doesn't disrupt. Yes, there'll be a switch in government, but it doesn't cause for election. Because the Prime Minister can say, I am not going to invoke Article 59 as well. It's not a must, people. The decision, he can say, well, I will gracefully bow out and I'm not sending the country back to elections. See you in the next 2 years, 1 year, however long. So we think that it's a must, and that's because every action has a reaction, and they're being reactive. So our synopsis would be to better get a better explanation on Article 59. Next option would be for us to finally just take this issue to the Constitutional Court and see, listen, can a person declare themselves independent? Let the Constitutional Court give a once and for all verdict on it. And I'm glad that you touched on something so important. I wanted to bring it up, but I didn't want to seem political, because it's not. And being that you touched it, I have to say, Member of Parliament Franklin Myers, he went independent. And I know that's what you're speaking about. And he did not disrupt the government. He went independent and he did not join or sign to bring a new majority. He said, I can no longer align with my party. I will support. Thank you. And that is something you cannot legislate. So then, Franklin Myers has just shown that going independent was not the problem. Because I can say I do not align with my party no more. I'll support where I need to. Because no matter what, even if I'm in the party, I have to vote my conscience. And we see it in Parliament, where members on the same party vote for and the other one vote against. And government is not broken. Level of maturity. And he said, Mr. Rumley said, the game might not be the problem. The players are the problem.
Just
Let us,
to,
let's have the...
can I just add to what Mr. Utley said? Same thing, that's the same topic. It's very short.
And then
Yes.
we'll have...
Very short in regards to...
Because we're running out of time.
Yes, I'm seeing that. Just to tap into what Mr. MP Utley mentioned, indeed, it's about the players, and it brings back to the people, who do you elect as your members of parliament? Other than that, in regards to Article 59, I do believe, and seeing that we hear about electoral reform, to make and to ask the people if adjustment needs to be made to Article 59, because currently it can be evoked right away, right? It's a possibility. But maybe there can be a time period mentioned that, let's say, within 2 weeks, if no new majority can be formed, then Article 59 can be invoked. So today we're here to hear, okay, what are the adjustments that we need to make sure that we do not go back to elections, because seeing that seems to be the issue. So those possibilities, adjusting the way how Article 59 can be used, or is it correct how it's currently being used? So that is what I would like to contribute to it. Maybe in the legislation, putting a timeline to when it can be used as well. So that's what I would like to contribute to now.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Rumney, for hosting this. And I have to say, I agree that the more you do it, more people will come out. But I also want to add that, and I'm saying this as a teacher as well, we realize that if you're only going to tell parents all the time, come to the school, that and this is not on you, you're doing this part with the town hall. That's important. We have to find, as educators or persons, sharing information, different ways to reach everyone. That's why when we're doing studies as well, we go all over the place to make sure that we get all the persons that we could get, because people get information differently. This question was actually for MP Ludmila, but she went outside, so I'm going to ask the panel. It was stated here or asked who read the governing program. My question, and this is for learning, so I have my pen to take notes. I always do this even when Parliament is on. At USM, my students have to tune in, and we have to discuss it because, you know, students, they influence a lot when it comes to society. So where exactly can we find the governing program? I would like the number that is stated. I have a specific reason why you're asking that. Exactly, and if MP Ludmila comes back in, I would like to write this down of the exact number and where is it placed. Now, my reason for that is I have been very vocal over the years about the National Gazette. With the National Gazette, we actually file things by the date. So you can't find, for example, let's say, the special education policy. You can't find it under S. You have to go and remember that this was done in 2019 on February. I've asked this many times, who came up with the system and why we're not changing it? Because we are people who files under last name or alphabetical order, so forth. So we have MP Ludmila here, so maybe she can share the exact number that we can find the governing program, because I read all the time. My bag has a book in it. What is the exact? Hold this to write it down for me when she says the number. No. I just want to know so I can write it down specifically, because I saw a picture in the media that expressed that the governing program and persons together taking a picture. But I would like to know the exact number in the National Gazette where we, the people, can get it. And this is not anything to her, because I have expressed many times the National Gazette, when you're trying to find information, until I almost want to believe that they want it to be lost in there, that the people cannot find the information. Because when we do research, we are looking for the information, and only because we have to split up. Imagine that you have to take time out of your schedule to split up to find a file that the government say they place there. And this is not any of you, because it's a lot of years this is going on. I want to also praise MP Roseberg. I find as well, and I think the maturity, like we said, that even on issues that, even if it's not aligned with your party, but you believe in it, that you still vote based on what you think the people should have. So that is maturity. I appreciate that, and I think everybody was happy to see Mr. Myers back, we say, with age and maturity. We have that. I was happy when they said Frankie's back. I was like, wow. Because you know why? At some point, even as young people, and I don't have to call myself young anymore, the church like to say the young people stand up, and I always try to debate if I'm still young. But you're happy for the young people coming up. You are. I am happy for all the young people. But when we saw so many times, and because we've been conducting research, I don't think it's not only us, we have data that shows that the falling of government interrupts schools. I'm just talking at school level, but there's other things. It really, when you ask, how come the children not doing so well? Something was started and then stopped. And even when we had the opportunity to interview all the past ministers of education from since 10. We had the opportunity to do that, just to ask about the system in terms of how would you, the time you had there, what were your challenges, what did you achieve, like what did you think went well, and if you had enough time, what would you want to work on? Very fruitful, every one of them very fruitful. And that's why one of the reasons I always say, if I champion MP Roseburg today, but I call her tomorrow and say, and I'm very good for doing that because I like people to do it to me as well. It doesn't mean if I tell her tomorrow that, MP, that wasn't good, means you have something against MP Roseburg. Maybe it's just a topic. So I agree with that part. And the last part, I don't know, MP Roseburg is just for you again, I'm sorry. The interpretation, I was wondering when Mr. Romney mentioned it, I don't want to go back into it too much for the debate to go there either, but sometimes when you are also on the radio or sharing information, it is helpful that you're explaining, yes. So thank you for that, the interpretation. Tonight we were wondering if based on what Mr. Romney was also saying, maybe what he's saying is also correct, but maybe what you're saying is also correct, because within there, it doesn't probably directly say you can or you can't, so you have the opportunity then to go independent, and like Mr. Meyer said, we can then maybe take it to the court and see what it says. So thank you for bearing with me. I want to share that quickly because I know the gentleman right there needs the opportunity. Sorry? Ask her? Oh, ask her for, everybody's waiting? The number.
Well,
Where do you have the number?
It's on the government.
But she'll send it to us individually, but is that really what we want? You understand?
But it's
Yeah.
But it's
yes.
on, it's on the government website.
It's on the
Yes. Hold on a minute. It's not about, it's on the government website. Just a minute, MP La Cruz. Thank you so much. What I'm trying to say, and it is not for me, it is, because I can find it. It is for the population, and I'll tell you something, just briefly, I'm sorry. When we were having the COVID vaccines, this is just a quick story. When I stood outside that door, when I came to take my own vaccine, and a gentleman walked up to me, I didn't know who he was. He just asked me if I could help him read the form, because he couldn't read. I am saying that if we want, as a country, to ensure that every single person participates, then we have to make it available. And not just available in those high-tech things that I myself have to Google. You can pull out some little booklets and make sure that every person, if you want their true contribution, I shouldn't have to get MP Ludmila personally to send me something. It shouldn't be so. It's nothing against any of you.
But you're 100%
Let me
right
tell
in
you
regards to
something with the challenge that I have. I advocate not for myself. I have zero things. This is my husband, and we drive a car that doesn't have air condition. But I say that to say this. I have no bills. Like, I don't owe anyone. And this is why it's easy for me to advocate to anywhere that I go. It doesn't matter. It's for the little people, it's for the big people, it is for where the Bible says, speak for those who can't speak for themselves. I've always been an advocate, and I will continue to do that. I know people they're the real advocate, but I'm just saying, right? It is important for me to express that because some people can't read, because some people, we just had some town halls, I don't speak Spanish and I don't speak Haitian patois. But we had the town halls and those things. I went to order a piece for my ear that can translate. It never worked, $99. But the fact is I got all the persons who can speak patois, Haitian Creole, and come and they were helping me translate. The people who could speak Spanish. Why? I have enough data, but I need to hear from that group of people. So I needed to stop being that we got to call this one and that one. I don't want favors. Persons don't want favors. We just want to go and know where to find the information. If we talk about independence, allow us to be independent by finding the information so we too can make educated decisions. That's all. Yes. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening to everyone, and we are running out of time, but I have to say my little 2 cents. Thank you very much, Yadira. Because I go to the government building and they send me, tell Tom to tell Dick to tell Harry, you can't find, nobody know nothing. And I've been here for 50 years. I'm a St. Maarten, I'm sorry. What I want to say now is that we are talking about election, but we have to talk about the root cause. If you have a swelling on your mouth, you don't know if it's fever, you don't know if somebody hit you, if somebody boxed you in your mouth, You have to know what causes the election. And I've been voting for over 20 years. And everybody need to know what caused election. No, election is not the problem, it's the cause of the election. And in my opinion, the cause of the election is the jumping of ships. So if we can tackle that jumping of ship, and I'm only saying from my own little humble opinion, if you want to leave your party, I would think, if you want to leave your party, you don't agree, you don't align, then say, listen, I only got 400 votes. Somebody mentioned it. I only got 400 votes. I think it's Mr. La Cruz. And I don't think I agree with you guys. I'm not going to get into this thing, but I'll just leave and go. And I feel that will curb the election and the jumping of ships. Because if you notice, Sarah, Mr. Maarten, all those people with the big numbers of votes, Theo, everybody with the big numbers, you ever see any one of them jump ship? None. None of those guys who get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1,000 votes, the leaders jump ship. Who jump ship is the people who down there who get 200 votes and think that they could govern and throw down the government. And that is one of the things that we have to do. I'm a voter, so I'm entitled to say, we have to stop the jumping of ships, and then we're going to stop the election. I understand about Article 59. I have to read more about it. No. This tonight is for the people, and a lot of people would not want to think that the jumping of ship is what caused the election, because a lot of people jump ship. But I feel if people are asked, if you don't agree with me anymore, you can leave my vote. You only get 300 votes, you didn't get your quota, then just leave and go. You could still be a part of the party. You could be a part of it, but if you don't agree, you can't be a parliamentarian. You just
So let me ask you a question. What happens now if the entire party decides, I no longer want to be a part of this? So you have the system right now. We have URSM, we have DP, SAM, and so URSM, I just use URSM for example, because they have the biggest three members. What happens now if collectively the URSM says, Central Speaking Party, URSM says, you know what, we can no longer align with what's going on. URSM leaves the coalition. Is that considered ship jumping?
Is that considered ship jumping? Then is when you go to election. That's all I have to say.
You see?
Then is when you go to election. If one party comes out and you don't have the majority anymore, then you go to election.
I want to show you, and again, this is for educational purposes only. I want to show you, when you speak of even the great Sarah Westcott Williams, there was no election from 1010 to 2014, but there was 2 to 3 governments in between. Why? There was shift of government. And wait, hold on. And Sarah Westcott Williams was a part of the shift of government. But you know why you can praise her today? Because during the shift of government, there was no election. So it goes back to the same thing. They didn't dissolve parliament. So with that being that Sarah Westcott Williams was the prime minister, she did not invoke Article 59. Therefore, today, in your mind, it seems seamless. But in that 4 years, there was a transition of 3 governments. 3 in 4 years, but there was no election. So again, we go back to say, at the end of the day, the freedom or will of a person should not be taken away. It's the ability of you saying, I am not going to invoke Article 59, or I am going to invoke Article 59. And I want to say again for the cameras, this is not any blight against anyone. It's educational purposes that I'm using that example. It's nothing against MP Westcott.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, I'm sorry just to interrupt. This is the last one I say. This session is very informative for me, for a lot of knowledge that I didn't know, and I get to know it tonight. I really wanted this to go, bigger as everybody wish. which the next one that you are going to have, I'm suggesting for a virtual meeting. Whereas because some people cannot come here personally and they can hear it. And if they have anything in their mind that they cannot say this the second time, they can come to the third time. We should have this more. And I also have another suggestion is that get the funding from the government or whatever organizations. This is all I want to say.
Good night. Finally, I got the mic. I'm the last person tonight. Thank you. First and foremost, I would like to thank Dr. Romney, MP Wiedenberg, MP Hartley, and Frankie, MP Myers. My brain is tired and I'm going slow, but I'm doing the best I can.
Okay, could you please stand?
I want to see me? I'm pretty. I'm trying to summarize everything in my head because, like you said, we're out of time. One thing I would like to spin back on the frustration of the people. I do not know how well I will speak on it, but from my observation, we are tired. The banner and the flag says we always go forward, always moving forward, but how can we move forward when the system is forcing us to work backwards? And I don't jump on the train whenever election going on. I prefer election to finish to know, understand what happened. So I don't have room or opportunity to assume anything or share misinformation. And I don't look at who's elected. I look at the reaction of the people and how the leader, I won't say control, but handle the people because they supported them and the leader is the representation of the people. But in other, vice versa, the people mentality represent the leader. So as we go on, I talk to different people, I watch different people, they're frustrated of how we got to do so much things to get one documentation or wait so long to get one documentation. We fed up with how we got to survive to live on this island. This is no longer our home, this is our house at this point. And as the generation come and goes, the new generation have to try clean up the mess that the older generation do not take accountable of creating in the first place. So when I look at these leaders on how the time passed by, I just ask myself, how well do they hold their colleagues, more importantly themselves, accountable? And they use what they learn to educate the public to become better citizens of St. Maarten. That's what I look at. The election reform, that comes and goes. Almost there's an election for anything. But do the people know that they can impeach the person and vote for somebody else? That's my train of thought. Election comes and goes, but the people and the generation are forever coming and evolving. And you guys said the most important word for the entire night, maturity. It's impossible high schoolers graduate to work with a new set of high schoolers. Imagine that. They survive high school to be back in high school mentality, but the only difference is they're making money to survive. And those that, I met many people that say, when I graduate, I can leave St. Maarten, I ain't coming back. I say, I don't blame you. Because impossible, he says, the future is for you, but you don't prepare the future for them. It's this backwards mentality, crab in the bucket. Everybody for themselves and everybody have so much arrogance and attitude behind it to back it up. So as leaders, please, from the grace of God and His Son, mature up. Do your research again. Because there's no way you should stop learning just because you have a seat at a position or the power or the influence. Because the newer generation is definitely looking at us. And when they get older, they have to deal with the mess that we created and failed to clean up. Those are my 2 cents for the night. I think I can feel my brain shutting down.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, I think we are way past our time, and I will say thank you. Was that?
We would like to have some closing remarks, I think.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I just looking at the time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, then I'll go first. To the gentleman, I notice you show up a lot to these type of things. I realize that. And when I hear you speak, I realize that listening goes a long way. That's why they say God gives you 2 ears, 1 mouth. You listen, you observe. What you speak, what you spoke today was 100% sense. And I would like to leave us with this notion. We spoke a lot about us and, locally. And before I leave, there's an influence that affects the way that we govern, which is the higher power. You know what I mean? Back in the day, you could have gone to 𝒕💉 and I write a piece of paper and I help you with your house, your land. Even, I would like to say, Frankie, until you get the last of this rope, where you were able to help your people. Today, you do that, they lock you up. Today, I help you with your rent, it's vote buying. I help you with blocks, it's vote buying. And what you create, right, is that distrust where people go to you and say, are you good? I remember with Claude, I get help with this, I get help with that. Because you were able to help. I see Mr. Rolex in the back. You were also one of the great leaders that were able to help people. And today, everything you do, it's a problem. And the way that this gentleman said it, when you go to your parent as a young person and say, I want to be a politician, you know what they ask you? You sure? They ain't proud no more. The people has built such a hatred for us. It sometimes makes me wonder why. I've been in politics for 5 years and I get blamed for things when I was in high school. Because of the hatred that the people have built. But why? Because they feel like we have failed them. They feel like when they are most vulnerable, we cannot help them. And as a minister or MP, when we actually tell you and go and try to do X, Y, Z, and you have an advisor or the people in the ministry or the, let's say advisors telling you, this is not applicable, this cannot be done. The person that has to come tell you, no, is me. And you are not then considerate of the legal ramifications. You are considerate of your reality at the time. So what happens then? I am no good. We are no good. So at this moment, I just want to leave that there, that we should be allowed to govern. And more importantly, allowed to take care of our people. That is what I want to leave it with. Thank you.
I guess I'm next. I'm going to leave MP Roseberg to be last, ladies last, in this particular case. Yeah, you did fight for equal rights, right? Thank you for coming out. It shows that you are paying attention to what's going on in St. Maarten, and more importantly, you care about what's going on in St. Maarten. And to dovetail on what MP Otley said, my reasoning for getting into politics many years ago was to help. That's what I thought politics was about. If you're in a position to help, you help. But you got to understand, there is a greater conspiracy, especially where it relates to St. Maarten. If we can't help you, then they are the saviors. If you come to us as your elected representative and legislation prohibits us from helping you, then we get a hurricane and they come in with the trucks and all the fanfare, then they're the savior and you totally overlook your local representatives. I was never in politics. I had never gotten into politics for anything that would help to enrich me. The position that I take on electoral reform, for example, if we had that system that I am proposing, where like the Friendside runoff system, my party would have been eliminated in the first round. But St. Maarten would have done better for it, because you would have had a government that you would have elected, and that government would have been able to govern for 4 years. We are only strong in numbers. We cannot face the outside world divided. We can be divided sometimes amongst ourselves, but we must be on the same page when we are dealing with the outside world. So again, electoral reform is a must, but we must not do it for other people. We must do it because we feel it will benefit us as a people. Thank you, and thanks for coming out.
I would like to close off with also thanking everyone for being here. I look forward to the next session with more people being here. I do believe we have to start somewhere. Also, the feedback that was received from everyone present here today that gave their view on certain things, I will take that with me and also discuss it with the URSM party, but also with my fellow colleagues in Parliament, so that we know, okay, we are dealing with electoral reform. This is the feedback that I have received based on this session. So that for sure I will bring back to Parliament and also to the party itself. Other than that, we have to start somewhere. I do believe that currently, if I look, although I'm new to politics, I said a year plus currently in it, I am still learning. I'm still looking around me and seeing, okay, where can I improve? So also I would like to bring forward to everyone present here today, for the ones that do not know me, if you have any feedback or if you have any suggestions, do reach out, because as it states in the Constitution, we represent all the people of St. Maarten. So I take that role very serious, and what all that has been brought forward here today, let's continue and let's make sure that what we would like to see St. Maarten become, that we make sure that we can contribute to such. And I do believe with electoral reform in the coming 4 years that there will be change in regards to that, because we have it on our agenda, I think all 3 parties here today, and I do believe the other members as well. So this is the beginning, and I look forward to the following sessions. Thank you.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of what I term interesting night. MP Rosenberg, MP Otley, MP Myers, thank you very much. We appreciate that you're coming out and having that conversation with the people.
Thank you.
It's not about SIPs for the people. We're just trying to cultivate a society that craves knowledge. Let go. And to you, the people, citizens of St. Maarten, appreciate it very much. Thank you for coming out. And what can I say? Thank you for your indulgence. Good night.